I know that this is so countercultural because so many of you grew up in families where your family is shit and they're mean and they do awful things, but family is family, and so we always show up. Nope. I will cut you out. I will never talk to you again. I literally. Hi guys, it's Rach, and I'm back for part 2 on our conversation about boundaries. What are emotional boundaries at their most fundamental level? Why do we need them? How do we put them in place? How do we uphold them? Like all the stuff. That's what we're talking about. And it's such a big conversation that we're doing a part 1 and a part 2. So you are listening to part 2, which is going to be great. But really, to get the most out of this conversation, I would suggest you go back just one day, one episode in the show, and listen to part 1. In that, I talk about what a boundary is and what are examples of your personal boundaries being crossed. What are situations that maybe you don't even realize are boundary crosses for you? So go check that one out before jumping into today's episode. So last time we talked about what a boundary is. Today I want to talk about how to set boundaries and why you should have them in the first place. What are the positive effects of holding these boundaries in place? This isn't just like new age hippie, like, oh, what are your boundaries? This is really important stuff. In part 1 of this, I talked a lot about autonomy. What does autonomy mean? I love the definition of words because, well, 1, I'm a writer, but 2, I feel like when you look up definitions, it often gives you a different perspective on a word than you originally were thinking of it as. So for autonomy, the definition is the right or condition of self-government. Self-government. Autonomy is that you are in charge of yourself. And having healthy emotional boundaries basically starts and ends with you believing in your right to govern yourself, to not let somebody else have ownership of your experience, your emotions, your feelings, your actions, none of it. That you, I'm assuming if you are listening to this, are an adult, or if you're under the age of 18, you are at least a teenager who's already thinking in a mature way. And if you are, then you understand, or hopefully are beginning to understand, that you have rights and you have worth as an individual on this planet. And it doesn't matter how much you love your partner. It doesn't matter how long you've been together. It doesn't matter how your family is structured. Period, point blank. You are still an individual being and you have the right to yourself. That's autonomy. So the rights that you have to self, I think, involve the right to feel safe. To feel safe where you are, to feel safe in your emotions, to feel safe in your feelings. And I think it's worth saying on this one in particular that the best indication that you have of safety is the conversation that you're having with your intuition. Your inner knowing, your highest self, your intuition, whatever you want to call it, always senses whether or not a situation or a person or a relationship is safe for you. There's an incredible book called The Gift of Fear by Gavin de Becker. It's old, but it's still wonderful. And in that book, I will never forget, he says, humans are the only animal that will sense fear and continue walking toward it. If a deer senses something is unsafe, she does not hang out to find out if it's true. She's out. She is bounding across the forest. She's out of here. She's not going to wait and see. She's not going to feel it out. She's not going to talk to him anyway because she feels like a bitch if she doesn't. She's gone. But we will get a weird feeling in our gut. We'll get a weird feeling and we don't know what it is, but we excuse it away for a myriad of reasons, usually because we don't want to be impolite. You have the right to feel safe at all times. And you don't even need to explain why you don't feel safe in someone's presence, why you don't feel safe in that house, why you don't feel safe in that building, why you don't feel safe in that experience. Doesn't matter what it is. You don't have to justify your feelings to anyone else, but you have a right to them. So you have autonomy. You have the right to feel safe. You have the right to privacy and respect for why you want that privacy in the first place. Yeah, I feel like I'm trying to think, and the only examples I can think of of privacy are inside of a marriage that lasted for a very long time. And that marriage started when I was very young. And so I had no other frame of reference for how a relationship was supposed to be, or like zero awareness that I had autonomy over my feelings, that I was allowed to be my own person. Like, we were so enmeshed, and I was so just like molded into who I thought I was supposed to be. The privacy thing is not something that occurred to me at all. And I would relish, like just relish, when I would have a business trip, because it would be 24 hours of just being by myself. It would be 24 hours of nobody asking me, what are you doing? Where are you going? What's like, like there was the constant like checking in and what's happening and what, and I don't even know why that existed. But for me, it was this just like nails on a chalkboard, like every time to do it, what are you doing? And I would constantly like be on edge about, I'm going to get a glass of water. I'm going to use the bathroom. So when I was away, I wouldn't even do anything. Like I literally just like be in my hotel room, like watching Netflix or something. But the ability to just have privacy was like nourishing to my soul. And I did not understand that was my right. I thought I had to like only get it in, these like little moments away from my regular life. And I actually understand now I would have been so much healthier and so much calmer if I knew that I had a right to my privacy, even inside of a marriage. And my relationship today, I love, and is so wonderful for so many reasons. But maybe the best part about it is that he was a fully grown, mature, adult human who had done all of his work, had done all of his therapy before he ever met me. And I have done so much work, am a fully grown adult human. We were not kids coming together to figure out this wacky world. We were two fully formed adults who were like, hi, this is who I am. And he was like, hey, this is who I am. And then we realized that those two people were very compatible as partners, but we are not enmeshed in each other. We are completely formed individual human beings who are walking side by side in this life. And we have today, I have so much privacy. I have so much of my own life, my own existence. And I really have a hard time imagining ever getting back to a place where it looks different than it does today. I can't imagine sharing finances with someone ever again. I can't imagine like needing to answer to someone again about what I'm doing or where I'm going. That is a personal choice. And I think privacy shows up in a lot of ways for us as individuals. But I just say that in case any of you have this sort of like irritated, like skin crawly feeling where you need to escape. I remember reading, Glennon Doyle when she wrote Untamed, and she talked about going and sitting in her closet floor, and it was like the only place that she could go to think and be alone. And I cried because that was me. I used to go hide in the closet. I used to sit in the floor in the closet with my back against the wall because it was the only place I had privacy. Now, in retrospect, unhealthy, but I also am glad, this is why I love people who write their stories, share their podcast, put it out there, because we see ourselves in someone else. And I was like, oh, thank God it's not just me who hid in the closet. So I say that in case some of you right now need to be reminded that you have a right to your privacy. And I know, it's worth saying, I know there are all kinds of feelings about that, because many of us were raised with really conservative, traditional ideology around what it means to be in a relationship, particularly if you're in a relationship with a man, and particularly if you're in a relationship with a man coming out of a culture that is patriarchal, that says that men know best and men have all the answers and we should let them, be in charge. And I know all of that stuff exists. And I guess if this conversation ruffles your feathers for some reason, maybe there's something there. Because honestly, if we're secure, if we're good, if everything feels really good to us all the way to our soul, our feathers don't get ruffled even if we disagree with what someone's saying. So if that kind of hits you in a certain way, maybe you need to explore that a little bit. You have the right to be heard. You have the right for someone to hear you and what you are saying, even if they don't agree with it. I found myself in a conversation with someone the other day, which is like where this whole idea for this podcast episode came from, is interacting with someone who has no emotional boundaries and is constantly trying to push past other people's. And in this conversation, they really wanted to talk to me, but the truth was they really wanted to talk at me. They did not want to be in a conversation. They didn't hear a word I said. In fact, it didn't really matter what I said. The only thing they used my conversation for was to flip it and to tell me why I was wrong. And I was not heard in that interaction. And here's a personal boundary I kept telling this person: if you don't lower your voice, like, I will not speak to you if you keep raising your voice. And if you don't lower your voice, I'm not going to have this conversation. And their voice got louder and louder and louder, and they started to get to the place where they were yelling. And I said again, I am not going to talk to you if you are going to talk to me like this. And I finally hung up because I'm 40 and I'm not going to do this anymore. I have worked too damn hard in my life to get to this place of peace, to let anybody come into my space with negative energy. I am so down to do life with people who don't think like me, act like me, love like me, vote like. I'm here for it all. I got every kind of family member you can imagine. I got conservative, super, very different from me in terms of how they vote, very different from me in how they believe and the church that they, all of it. And I can love them for the people they are based on one very simple rule. I have one very simple rule when it comes to who can be in my personal space and who can interact with my children and who can come in to our sphere. I've got one rule, and I'm going to get to it in a minute, but let me finish this list first. You have the right to be heard, and you should not be in relationships with people who do not listen to what you're saying. Have you ever been in a conversation with someone and they're literally not even listening to you? They're just waiting for their chance to talk? That's not you being heard. You have the right to feel validated, but not by someone else. You have the right to feel validated in yourself. You have the right to understand that you don't need somebody else to tell you are worthy to be worthy. You don't need someone else to tell you that your feelings are valid for them to be valid. Period. The last thing is that you have the right to have your no respected. The same as my daughter and her no being respected, you have the same exact right. Those are the rights that you have. And I hope that you remember them as we go further into this conversation on boundaries, because some of this stuff's going to come up. You're going to try to start asserting yourself. You're going to try and start speaking your truth and saying what you need. And you're going to have people who push back. And I want you to remember the rights that you have and the autonomy you have to self-government. We're going to land this plane with how to set and create boundaries. But before we get there, I just want to have a quick moment on why. Other than the right to removing toxicity from your life, which is amazing and so incredible, I want to give like really practical reasons why having emotional boundaries is going to be so freaking great for you. And the first one is you are going to have so much more energy. You're going to get better sleep because you're not going to have insomnia because you just got in a crazy conversation with your mom right before you went to sleep. You're going to have so much more energy because you are not expending emotional energy trying to deal with someone else's chaos. You're not expending emotional energy taking responsibility for the shit that your sister's doing. You're not expending emotional energy being the balancing touchstone in your family and playing peacemaker between your siblings and your parents. You're going to have more energy because you're not opening a vein on a daily basis and giving everything you've got to everyone else around you. The second thing that's going to happen is that you are going to have more confidence and more self-esteem. It's so easy to lose both when you are letting someone else control you. It's so easy. Once someone understands how they can manipulate us, how they can use a little dig, how they can use shame as a mechanism, how they can do little things and say little things, once they understand how to make us their puppet, even, by the way, if they don't consciously know that's what they're doing. Maybe it's a survival technique that they have left over from their childhood. I don't know, and I don't care why they are the way they are. All I care about is how I am acting in the moment. And I'm glad I thought of that, because this is the other thing that drives me insane. This is the other thing that I think has been used to control and manipulate so many of us, is that when you call someone out on the way they are behaving, or when you say that you need a boundary, it's the people who immediately start making excuses for why they are that way. Yeah, but you know that her mom was emotionally abusive to her and that's why she acts this way. Or yeah, but you know that he has a gambling addiction and so it manifests like this. Or yeah, but you know that his ex-girlfriend cheated on him and he's never been the same. Yeah, but let me tell you actually exactly what I said to this person who realized they had crossed the boundary, who reached out later and was like trying to backpedal, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I can totally understand why you would do what you just did. I get it. I've done the work, done a lot of therapy. I understand how being in a severe emotional state makes you lash out at other people. But just because I understand why you made that choice does not excuse you from your actions. If there is one line I tell my kids more than any other, it is this: do not listen to what people say, because people will say anything. Watch how they act. Watch how they act, because actions never lie. So there's a whole backstory for why someone is behaving the way they're behaving. But just because you got a really good excuse doesn't give you the right to be shitty. Because by bringing up someone's past as a rationale for behavior, we're going back to a boundary crossing, which is to ask you to take responsibility or to ask you to feel badly for something that happened to them or for the way they are behaving. And that's not okay. So one of the beautiful things about having boundaries is that you will have more self-esteem because you will begin to trust yourself again. You will trust yourself to take care of yourself. And if any of you have done IFS therapy or inner child work, you'll also have a calmer sense, a more centered feeling with those younger versions of yourself because the adult who you are today is really in control. They trust that you've got it because you're beginning to act in ways that is protective of those younger versions of yourself. If you want to learn more about that too, if you have no idea what I'm talking about when I say IFS therapy, there's an incredible book called No Bad Parts. And it's just so good. So if you want to explore that a little bit and understand how a younger version of us can really take full control of our whole body, our emotions, our feelings, all of it. They can take control, like literally they get in the driver's seat. If you've ever had a situation where you feel like you react super irrationally or you get really angry or you have this emotional spike and then later you're like, what just happened? That is you being hijacked by another part of yourself. And that book is so good. And if you get the audiobook, he does really incredible guided meditations too. So highly recommend if you've never heard of that before. The last thing that having boundaries is going to help you with is you're going to be better at spotting those red flags. This is for any of you who find yourself in a continuous cycle of dating douchebags, of dating crazy girls, of you keep going, what on earth? How do I keep attracting these people into my life? This is really going to help you to spot red flags faster because you're going to learn this behavior. Even in this conversation I was having with someone, because I've done so much work on boundary setting, I was almost like watching the conversation sort of one step removed from it and like fascinated, like, oh my, look at you trying to use shame. Look at you trying to use guilt. Look at you trying to blame. Like it was a psych major could have written an entire thesis on the things that this person was saying. And I was just watching it like, whoa. And what's so beautiful is like, I got off the phone and there was a part of me 100%, which is why I want to do this conversation. There was a part of me that was triggered. I know exactly what age I was when this woman started manipulating me in this way. And I didn't know what boundaries were. And I had no idea how to protect myself. And I was a puppet to this shame, guilt, all of it for years. So I know which part of me was triggered. And last night when it happened, I prayed and I burned some sage around myself. And I had a conversation with that younger version of me. And I was like, I got this. You are not that little girl anymore. You do not have to take part in this. You do not. And all of these things that I was feeling, I can recognize were from the version of me who believed that she had to be a good girl. The version of me that believed that she had to please everybody. And oh my gosh, what will happen if this person doesn't like me? Or what will happen if this person, thinks I'm bad? Or like all of these things that version of me would have worried about. And I can tell you with just so much, with every fiber of my being, I could not care less what this person thinks of me. I could not care less. I know who I am. I know who I am down to my core. I don't see myself as better than I am. I don't see myself as worse than I am. I just am this version of myself. I work hard to be the best version of me that I can be. And you cannot manipulate me into believing something else, because the second that I start to allow those things to take root is the second that I slip back into a world where I try and please her and do exactly what she wants me to do so that she gets the emotional hit that she's looking for. So I did a lot of work on that last night, but that's one of the biggest pieces. And I wrote in my notes here, I'm like, this will take grit. To get good at emotional boundaries, it's going to take some perseverance. It's going to take some grit. It's going to take you getting a thick skin and really knowing yourself, because that's the game that's being played. Is, can I use, or which method of emotional manipulation can I use to get you to do what I want you to do? Oh, guys, if you don't follow Dr. Nicole, you have to. She does these amazing skits where she pretends to be like a parent, and then one of her teammates pretends to be like a kid. And it's like what it's like basically a real conversation of if a parent actually knew how they were emotionally I'm not explaining it well. Please go watch them. Her reels are fantastic. And even though there are a bunch of different kinds of parents, I somehow see my parent in everyone. It's wild. Anyway. Okay, so we talked about why you should set some boundaries. Now let's talk about how to set boundaries and how to hold them in place. You remember in school, did you ever have like a cheerleading team, pep rally team who did the be aggressive cheer? Be aggressive. Be aggressive. A-G-G-R-E-S. Oh, wait. B-E-A-G-G-R-E-S-S-I-V-E, aggressive. Oh, I would have been such a good cheerleader. Anyway, we are going to be assertive, not aggressive. And there is a difference. Let's look up the definition of the word assertive. Having or showing a confident and forceful personality. A confident or forceful personality without being aggressive, without being rude. And let me tell you, the person who is used to you crumbling and falling for it and taking part in this absolutely unhealthy emotional relationship you have, they are going to immediately say that you're being mean, that you're being aggressive, that you're being a bitch, that you're being rude, that you're being fill in the blank. In fact, they'll probably find the one word that is most effective in getting you to cave, because they're really good at it, even if they're not conscious of it. So you have got to work on being assertive. And assertive means that you say exactly what you need. You don't get emotional about it. You don't make excuses for it. You don't build a whole backstory. Like when I was on tour last, there was this activity that we did in the audience where I asked you to think of the dream that you were working on, the goal that you had for your life, and then you found a stranger in the audience and you were supposed to tell the stranger what the goal was. And I was like, the key is that you have to tell them the goal in a sentence, because what women especially do is they'll give a whole backstory. They're like, they want to say that their goal is to write a book, but they'll be like, well, when I was 4 years old, I was on a train with my family. There was a horrible train accident. They'll start giving a full biography of their life because they're basically asking permission to have the dream that they dream. And they think that the only way they can get permission is to give you 72 justifiable reasons why they deserve to have this dream in their life. So what I would say is the same thing happens when we're asking to hold boundaries in place. We believe that we got to give a whole backstory. And no is a full sentence. Now, inside of relationship, I do think it can be really powerful to explain to people context for it. So my example of this is probably about 14 years ago. I had 2 young sons. Maybe they were a little bit older, but I remember that there was a member of my family who was really struggling with drinking. They were drinking a lot. And they would come to every family party. We'd have like birthdays or Thanksgiving or whatever. And they would come to family parties and they would always end up drinking way too much. And when they would drink too much, it would make me feel really uncomfortable because they're a member of my family. They would make me feel really uncomfortable. I felt like I had to like protect them. I felt like I was like trying to just like, it was just a lot. You can use your imagination. And I started to pull back from inviting them to family functions because I had so much anxiety about how they would behave. And then I felt like that wasn't really fair because I was pulling back from someone I love very much, but I wasn't being mature and I wasn't explaining to them why. And so they didn't even know that there was a situation that they could correct. So I agonized about it for months. Like I was so scared to have this conversation because at the time, I wasn't very good at having a hard conversation. And so I thought about it a lot. I prayed about it a lot. And the next time I was with this person, I said, I love having you come and I love that the kids are getting to know you and like experience you in their lives. But I have to tell you, when you come, you tend to drink quite a lot and it makes me feel very unsafe and it makes me feel scared and it makes me embarrassed. And like, I want you to be aware of that because I don't want it to affect the family and I don't want to affect whether or not I invite you. And, I really want the kids to know you, but if this is what it's going to be, I don't want you in this house. And I was so nervous. I'm sure I said it nicer than that, but I was so nervous because I really thought there's no way this person's going to react well. They really took it in, like really heard it. I mean, it's been 13 years, 12 years, and they've never had a drink in my presence again. And, at first I'm like, oh my gosh, like, of course, like have some wine, whatever. And they very kindly, that was probably like my codependence or whatever. They very kindly were like, I'm not sure that I can have one drink. Like I tend to, be a lush and kind of life of the party and do the thing. So they were like, I heard you and I don't ever want to make you feel like that, obviously. So I'm just not going to drink. And it's been over a decade and they have kept that. Now, not everybody is mature enough to do that, but it ended up going so much better than I thought that it would. And it happened because I spoke my truth. I said what the boundary was. And I think the important thing with boundaries is that you do not tell this person how they are supposed to behave. You tell this person how they need to behave if they want to interact with you. See, that's the thing. The family member I was talking to last night, I don't care what she thinks of me. I don't care if I never speak to her again. I don't care. I'm like, you are the one who wants to be in my life. If you want to be in my life, this is how it's going to be to interact with me. And I'll tell you, because I promised I would, that I only have one rule. And the rule is that you are respectful and kind to every member of our family, or you don't get to interact with any of us. And this one is really powerful for anybody who has kids, because I know that some of you have aunts and uncles and sisters and grandparents and in-laws who treat you like shit, but want a relationship with your daughter. Right? They're disrespectful to you. They do all kinds, but they want access to their grandbabies. And I'm telling you right now, that is the most unhealthy thing. In what world do you think it is healthy for a child to grow up, loving their Nana, and she does all these things and she spoils them rotten, but then they watch her treat mommy like shit? They watch her make mommy cry. What kind of psychology is that? Because all you're going to do is now raise the next generation of kids who's like, whatever we do, don't piss off Nana. We want her love and affection. Look how nice she is to us. We don't ever want to be like that, because you are showing your kids how people are allowed to treat you. which means you are showing your kids how people are allowed to treat them. So my rule is you are nice and respectful to all of us, or you don't get to interact with any of us. Here's a fantastic example. We have family members who are very conservative and have really strong beliefs about LGBTQ+. My son, as I've said publicly, and he's very much out, is queer. And you do not get to pick and choose which of the kids you want to interact with. And you don't get to have the kids in the room and make snarky comments about woke culture or people who are gay or, trans rights or all of the stupid shit that they like to bring up. Like, we're out. We don't do, because y'all, if you don't understand that is deeply passive aggressive attempts at manipulation, when someone's not talking to you, but they're talking within earshot about something that they know that you are, that they know that you do, or that they know that you care about, that is passive aggressive emotional manipulation. And you are not allowed to make snarky comments that you know are going to affect one kid and then worship the other one because he's the broiest bro and plays sports and is your dream. We don't do that shit. Are you crazy? I don't care who you are. I go so mama bear on this. I will cut you out. I will never talk to you again. I know that this is so countercultural because so many of you grew up in families where your family is shitty and they're mean and they do awful things, but family is family. And so we always show up. Nope. I have the most incredible friends. I have the most incredible community who are like family and share our values and treat everybody well. I don't need to interact with you. Why? Because we got blood in common? No. Nope. No. We don't do that. So that is my rule. You are kind and respectful of all of us, and you are kind and respectful of all of us and our values, or you don't get to interact with any of us. Because that's the other thing that happens is those little comments, you go home for Thanksgiving and someone will say something that's like, you're like, gross, like thinly veiled homophobia or thinly veiled bigotry or some shitty thing. I'm like, we will leave. Because again, I don't need you to behave this way at all times. I'm not trying to fix you. That's not my problem. You are on your own journey. But if you want to interact with me, if you want to interact with my family, these are our values. And I know that you know how to behave in a different way because you sure do behave in a different way when you're out in front of church on Sunday. So if you can show up for those people and pretend to be all of these things that you are clearly not exhibiting in this moment, then I know that you know how to flip it on and off. So you can flip it on and off for us, or we just won't be here. And the freedom of suddenly not having to interact with toxic relatives is one of the greatest things that can happen to you, legitimately. So, assertive but not aggressive. The other thing is physical boundaries. So that's when, that's me having a conversation with a family member and saying, you can't come into this space and get drunk. That's me having a conversation with a family member and saying, you're going to be nice to us or you get to interact with none of us. I mean, like, your home is supposed to be your safe space. Your home is supposed to rise up to meet you, as Oprah used to say. It's supposed to be your nest. It's supposed to be this, like, protective bubble for you. And when you allow negative, toxic energy into that space, you've breached the walls of your bubble. You've put a crack into this thing that's supposed to be keeping you whole. this source of energy for you and your family is being affected because you're letting negative energy into it. And speaking of this, I do want to touch on, it's kind of a weird way to take a conversation on boundaries, or maybe it's not. And I'm going to go into one of my like woo-woo, hippie, spiritual things, but roll with me for a second. I really think it's also worth saying that you should be upholding spiritual boundaries. Spiritual boundaries meaning every single person, animal, creature, anything in the world is putting energy out. And you and I both know that there are people who have toxic energy. There are people who have negative energy. There are people who they're adding something into the mix, into the world, and that's not great. And I think that those kind of energies can linger. I think that energetically, negative stuff can attach to us. It can attach to spaces. And I just think it's really important to acknowledge that. Because after I got off the phone last night, I smudged my room and I smudged myself. Smudging is, you burn sage and you clear out the space. There's not magical power in burning sage. It's what it symbolizes. It symbolizes a cleansing. It symbolizes that you energetically are saying, nope, we're clearing this energy out because only goodness is going to be here. It's you sort of resetting. Oftentimes I'll imagine a white light or a amber light sort of in a protective bubble around our house. I'll imagine it around my kids. I'll imagine it around my partner as he's traveling for work. I'm like sort of praying a protective hedge around our family. And there are times where I think if you're attuned to spirituality, if you're attuned to something bigger, it's like you'll feel something not right in the space that you're in, whether it's at home or out in the world. And it's just a reminder to, go in and pray protection around yourself. I wear an evil eye necklace and have for years. I haven't taken this off. I don't believe that this evil eye necklace has magical powers. I believe that every time I see myself wearing it in the mirror, that I'm like energetically praying protection around. I'm just being reminded of that intention. So for whatever that's worth, having boundaries spiritually where like if you feel something feels not right, you go into a space, you're staying in a hotel room, like just like something feels wrong, that those boundaries matter almost more than any other, that you protect yourself. When it comes to boundaries, setting boundaries and creating them, I really want to make sure that you understand, if you haven't done this before, it's like building a muscle. You're going to have to practice. You're going to have to keep coming back to the yoga mat and trying to do, a plank for a little bit longer every time, a little bit longer every time, a little bit longer every time. And then suddenly you can hold a plank for 25 seconds without puking. It's the same when it comes to boundaries. It's very possible that the first time you try and put a boundary in place with someone, it'll fail. They'll say something, it'll make you spiral. You'll end up accidentally doing exactly what they wanted you to do. But as long as you keep coming back to the imaginary mat, that you keep working on it, that you learn to say no, that you'll learn to say no way before you can learn to say no without feeling guilty. Just sit with that for a second. The first step is, do I have the courage to stand up for myself? The second step is, okay, now I'm standing up for myself. How do I do this without constantly feeling like I'm going to throw up? This is a process. And you are getting me at the end of years of work, but also you're getting me after I have had to learn to put so many boundaries in place for my own health, for my own peace of mind, for my own emotional stability, honestly. So this is a great example. I have a new boundary I put in place that I'm so excited about. And it's about to be so great. And I'm going to tell you guys about it. Because if you are still here at the end of part 2, after 50 minutes, you're my peeps. I turned off comments on Instagram. I have never been so free. I mean, now look, let me go back in time. A few years ago, I noticed that Taylor Swift didn't have her comments on in social media. And I was like, that's amazing. Like, that is so smart that she's basically like, I'm so tired of people being ugly and mean and talking shit and hating on me and using my platform to do so, that I'm just not going to allow it. And I thought that was so confident of her, because most celebrities just let people say whatever they want to say. And it's like the price of admission if you want to be famous. So I was like, that's so cool. And back then I was like, oh, I would love that. I would love that. I think that would be so cool, because inevitably the comment section becomes this opportunity for people's most favorite thing to do in the world on social media today, which is like, how can I just rip apart everything you said? How can I tell you that you're ugly? How can I tell you that you're fat? How can I tell you that this looks stupid, that you're stupid? Just all of it. So back when I saw Tay-Tay do it, I really wanted to do it. And I remember asking, I had a publicist at the time, I was like, hey, I think I'm going to just turn off comments. And they were like, you cannot do that. You absolutely cannot do that. Social media is a public forum. It's a community for people. They got to be allowed to talk. They got to be like, you will be murdered. You can't do that. And I listened, and I shouldn't have. I should have trusted my heart and my gut and just done what I wanted to do. But I listened because I was like, oh God, you can't do that. And then the other day, well, 2 things happened. One, I had to write a post about my ex-husband passing away. And I just couldn't deal. I could not. I couldn't even believe that I had to write that post. I had no idea what to say. There are not words. It's too horrible. Like, all of it. And I was going through, and I wanted to like shut off likes because I was like, gross. I like don't want, the like count on this. And then for the first time ever, I saw the button that said turn off comments. And I was like, yes, because if I leave comments on, people are going to use the comment section to ask questions, to tell stories, to talk shit, to be like, yes, there will be an outpouring of love and support, but there's also going to be a lot of hateful people. And that, my comment section that my children can see is not the place for that. So I shut off comments, and it was like 1,000-pound boulder came off my chest, because I already had to put this thing out in the world. It was already too horrible. And I was like, at least I don't have to worry about that. And then I, at some point started posting on social again. And as a side note, I haven't read my comment section in years. I literally don't know what anyone's saying. You could be like, girl, you get 1,000 comments a post about how much they love you. I have no idea. I literally have no idea. I don't read the comments, but at the same time, check this, I 100% do not post all of the stuff I want to post because of the comment section. I love outfits. I really love clothes. I don't have expensive taste, but I really like putting together cute outfits. I would love to post my outfits. I don't, because I know there's going to be mean comments about how I look, or like, who does she think she is? Why is she posting her outfit? Because I freaking thought that my Adidas tracksuit looked cute, Carol. Like, I remember, I did see a comment. I did see a comment last year when I went on tour. I thought it was so cute. My bestie, Rosie, and I, she's been my stylist forever. And I was like, oh, what if we did a shoot and I'm like wearing tuxedos? Because I just thought it was funny. I was going on tour for the first time. And in my head, it was like late night talk show host. And so I was like, oh, what if I just wore a bunch of suits? And we thought it was cute. We had fun. Like, we thought it was so cool. and I posted a picture about going on tour, and I actually looked at comments because I knew y'all would have questions. You always do. You're like, where is it at? What do I wear? And so the first time ever, I'm like, I'm going to go on here and interact with people, answer questions. So I was there, I was interacting, answering questions. And within 15 minutes, someone literally wrote, ugh, why is she wearing a suit? Who does she think she is? And I think I actually commented back and I was like, I was wearing a suit because I thought it looked cool. Like, what? But for me, I don't get it. I do not get this concept that exists in the world of shitting on people for literally trying anything. And look, it goes back to this idea. I don't respect the person who writes a comment like that. I have no respect for them because I would never go on someone's social and be like, your hair looks stupid. Why are you wearing that dress? Who do you think you are? Who says that? It's 2023. Who is still saying that to people? Who do you think you are? What? So anyway, so even though I don't read comments, I'm still changing my behavior because of what I perceive will be there. Right? So I don't post a lot of stuff. I literally post about the podcast, basically, is kind of all I'm doing right now because I'm just exhausted of like, nothing's right. It's never good enough. You can't please everybody. Like, I just want to put stuff out into the world. And I don't care if I never get another follower. I don't care if I never get another like. I just want the right to be able to show up in the world as myself. So the other day I was scrolling Instagram and I follow Alex Cooper, who's so different from me, but I respect the shit out of what she's built. And I saw that she shut her comments off, like permanently, no comments on any posts. And I was like, oh my God, we're allowed to do this. It's not just Tay-Tay anymore. Now Alex is doing it. And I think it is so badass because you are essentially saying, I do not need your approval. I don't need your likes. I don't need you to affirm me. I just want to be able to show up as myself. I just want autonomy over my own experience in this space. So get ready, because now when I'm wearing a cute outfit, I'm just going to post it. I'm just going to be myself. And yeah, that sounds so ridiculous. But oftentimes I've had to put boundaries in place as a content creator when it comes to social media. I think that social media is very rarely healthy for any of us. So if I want to be able to keep showing up in the world to the full extent of who I am, maybe there's a future world where I really, truly don't care. And so I don't make decisions based on what other people are going to say. But at this point, I still care. So I need to put a boundary up. And the boundary is no comments at all. Pretty pumped, guys. I'm pretty pumped about this decision. So if you're there, if you follow me on Instagram, thank you for playing. I love ya. Got a lot more content coming your way. And maybe that's something you consider too, is just showing up in the world as yourself and not giving someone else the ability to have an opinion on it. Here's the last thing I wrote. This will take grit. Establishing emotional boundaries is huge. It's something that very few people ever even attempt because it's so difficult. But the rewards from climbing this particular mountain are equally as rewarding. The other thing I wrote was to remember that this will be hard because you don't have experience with it yet. Or maybe you don't have enough experience with it yet. And the person that you're trying to establish boundaries with, they definitely don't have experience with it. So if they don't have experience and you don't have experience, just know that makes it all harder. So one of the things that you can do to boost yourself up as you try and take it on is just to surround yourself with more information, people who are way smarter than me, read their books, go listen to their podcast, go follow Dr. Nicole. So you have some shoring up of the rightness of your cause so that you understand how valuable this work is and that you are justified in wanting to do it. All right, guys. I hope this episode was so helpful to you. I hope you heard something you needed to hear. I hope you got some ideas. And I hope more than anything that it pushes you further on the journey to doing the work to take control of your emotional experience. I will be back soon with more information. As always, please consider subscribing to the podcast. This is the first time you've listened. Subscribe to the show so you never miss an episode. Give the show, if you love it, go ahead and give it a bunch of star ratings. If you don't love it, just keep that to yourself. And if there's something I said today that you think will be helpful, please, please, please consider sharing, putting it out in the world. I'll be back soon with more information, with more ideas, with more conversation. Until then, remember, I love you and I'm rooting for you. So I'm listening to this voicemail and I'm like, oh my God, some guy has got my phone number. It is a man's voice, super sinister,